what, and for us, it's later to the game, obviously. Like we have a considerable amount of independence up into like 1890, where we're able to like have a whole nother fucking war with the U.S. government after already having a war where we have a settled nation with them and peace treaty because we won that war. And then the Black Hills War, when they started breaking that treaty, leads up to like Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, and that's like the period most people are aware of. The first war is Red Cloud's War, and so Red Cloud goes around this entire watershed. It's basically the Missouri watershed, and defines it based on the furthest shoreline. So the whole river and the shoreline over there is ours. Is that how the treaty was written? And it's because it's important to be able to control that level of ecosystem for the prosperity of whatever is living there, not just humans. Like, it was about preserving buffalo herds, which the mass extinction of doesn't happen until the 1900s, right? Like the final solution level of massacring buffaloes is not happening until we're already on the reservation and we're putting up too much of a fight while on that reservation. Okay. And so like the US government assassinates Sitting Bull. And so then Spotted Elk comes down, often called Bigfoot. So like the highway I always drive is called the Bigfoot Memorial Highway. And I'm always on that path he walked from Rapid City. Like when I come from Rapid City to my reservation, I literally go down this path every time I'm there and relive this journey of genocide. It's a lot of weight on somebody's head, like to be that engrossed in like history. Like I come from Michigan to South Dakota and I drive through Stillwater. I go through Minneapolis. I go to St. Paul. I go and see this history we're talking about right now, just to go home, And so like, it's interesting to say the least. I don't know exactly where I wanted to go with that, but it's a lot of context that's important to what we're discussing with the Wounded Knee occupation, because why is this site chosen? Why does it play this importance? Like when I'm talking about this place, it's a mass grave site of these people who fled after political assassination of a red nationalist leader, a Lakota nationalist leader who was to this day is one of the most studied guerrilla leaders next to Che Guevara. High honors, in my opinion. So it's and how many communists can tell me about Crazy Horse? He's like, in everyone's eyes, he is considered to the same degree as the guerrilla fighters that we idolized, in 1917, only 27 years after this massacre. In fact, Sitting Bull, one of my favorite quotes to give out, said, "The white man knows how to make everything, but not how to distribute it." And it's like, damn, bro, you read some Marx, that's some good shit. So he, it's very relevant to me, because when we're asking what are the conditions we're organizing in, people in South Dakota should know this history. Considering that the Ochetechekoween stretched all the way to the Mississippi. And that's the larger political structure we're talking about when we're talking about Lakotas. Our territories stretched all the way out to the Mississippi, all the way to the Rockies, up into Alberta, down to Texas. That's a huge area. And nobody, knows that we're the last standing, Native Federation. Lewis and Clark were told explicitly by Thomas Jefferson, make friends with them. And then they try to cheat us. Like, they try not to pay our toll. And that's the big reason why people start taking this this by sea journey to the West Coast. They're not crossing the plains. It's because we're enacting tolls, or the Comanche are murdering them. Those are your two choices. Pay up or we'll murder you, or just die to the Comanche. There is no toll, or you go to Mexico, walk across, sail back, and so that's how it happens, is they enclose us around. And so like we start to see people come through and they never come back. You know, nobody ever came back until the railroad, and then the railroad sets up these guns as like a promotion, like a game to play while you're bored on the train, to just shoot buffalo while you drive through. And then it's still to this day cheaper to ship by sea. So the Transcontinental Railroad basically did nothing until like high-speed rails became a thing, and it's not a high-speed rail. So
no, and I want to say, if I remember reading correctly, like they specifically made it cut through indigenous land for the purpose of like displacing them and then trying to buy that land, right? Like creating the conditions to where you would need to sell the land, right? Like that was a purpose of the Transcontinental Railroad, 100%. Let alone the economic reasons or whatever, connecting the coast, whatever bullshit Manifest Destiny.
well, that's just the propaganda. Like
Yeah.
around this same time, we have like the popularization of bananas and stuff, like the population of the color green. Like these are all a part of the same bits of like yellow journalism propaganda that start like the Spanish American War. And like literally William Randolph Hearst, he was a primary driver as well for the economic want for trains to go through the plains, which would allow settlement to become easier, right? That's why so many settlements sprung up along the railroad, right? And in his newspaper, he would like be basically calling us communists. Like literally, like the original Red Scare was about Lakota people so they could steal our land for gold, and so like William Randolph Hearst is heavily invested in, like his family was heavily invested in Black Hills Gold. After, like they started off as slavers and then left America to go to California where slavery was still legal with natives for a very long time. And then they were like,
past the Civil War, like most people don't realize, past the Civil War, we had slavery in California, in the U.S., like full-on chattel slavery that existed.
And so yeah, exactly. And then they're like, what if we start murdering them for gold because we're running out of gold spots over here where we've already murdered people. And so like we have this very like, it's just the same names in history of like monopolists, like imperialists. I mean, when we get down to it, these imperialist figures that were great friends with like Teddy Roosevelt and helped him start the Spanish-American War, which leveraged him into his presidential career. Like these same people are the same people orchestrating the genocide of my people, from California. And now we see Stanford fuckers orchestrating genocide in Palestine along with Mossad and stuff, and then we see a deployment of towers tested in Palestine around reservations. Since 2019, they've been putting up towers around reservations like they have around Gaza. If that doesn't tell you what they think is going to happen, you have your head in your fucking ass. You know what I mean? Stop huffing your own farts. Come breathe the fresh air. The fresh air is decolonization. So like, this all these things are built into why Wounded Knee becomes such a symbolic place and provides this level of defense through the optics of, if the government comes in and murders a group of Indians at Wounded Knee, it will be a second mass grave on a mass grave site. And like now, all those original buildings have been torn down. The church no longer exists because the government tore it down because the line right after Wounded Knee was, we didn't shoot any bullets into the church. Hundreds of bullets were shot into that church, and they fucking burned it down to hide the evidence. All the buildings people were hiding in, they fucking burned it down to act like they weren't the ones shooting. And a lot of it is like they take a picture of an AK-47 that AP News put out. Guy, big old smile on his face, holding up an AK-47. It didn't work. Most of their weapons were bolt action rifles. They had 13-year-olds armed with guns. They had 7-year-olds helping dig bunkers. I've met them. One of the more interesting things is there's an elderly woman who was a survivor of the original massacre, one of the babies found suckling on her mother's tit at the bottom of a flagpole for peace flag. The mom is murdered. The baby is still breastfeeding. You know, like it's not that long ago. You know, like great grandfathers of like my uncles rode with Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. You know, like these aren't distant figures in our brains. These are people, relatives that lived recently, very recently. And we appreciate how recently, because it hasn't been that long. We've been this oppressed, you know, and we have fought and made many gains. And I think through communist organizing and effort, we could see even more gains and actually see true liberation, you know, and land back. And that's, you know, the symbol that Wounded Knee provides, right? Is this, it's 300 Oglala people standing up to the U.S. government and winning. You know, we won the concessions. The Nixon administration comes like a week or two after. I have the videos of them speaking in Kyle, South Dakota, and at the end, one of the dudes, he's like, "I just want to be clear. It was not because of Wounded Knee we showed up. I just want to be clear. Do not do another one, okay?"
Please don't do that. Please don't do it again. That scared us.
Hilarious little sidebar, dude. Like,